Next, from local heroes to national superstars, Sublime hits the big time.
Next thing you know, my phone's ringing. Turn on K-Rock right now. What I got, it was on, and that was it. And the people demanded it.
Loving is what I got.
When Behind the Music continues.
Coming.
Practice Santeria, I ain't got no crystal ball.
27-year-old Brad Knoll had every reason to celebrate in the summer of 1995. Sublime had just scored a record deal, and he had a brand new baby son named Jacob.
He had everything that he wanted, everything was going right in his life, but he still wasn't happy.
But I really want to say I can't define.
There were some days where he would just be so gloomy, and he didn't even know why, and it started driving him nuts. That's another reason why he turned to drugs. You know, it pulled him out of it. He was trying to self-medicate.
Brad had made an effort to get clean after the birth of his son, but when the band headed out to Austin, Texas in early '96 to record their major label debut, his resolve weakened.
Brad felt a lot of pressure for the self-titled album. He didn't have a lot of songs written when he went out there to start recording it.
Brad was certainly going through conflict and stress or depression or whatever it was. I remember him telling me, you know, man, lyrics are hard, you know?
He started using real heavily once we got out there.
The amount of time that Brad spent shooting up started turning into long periods of time where I didn't know if he was okay or not, and it came a point to where it scared me, and I just called the label and said, bring these guys home. They were scaring me, and Brad was scaring me, and I didn't know what to do.
5 weeks into the sessions, the label decided to send Brad back home to Southern California to clean up.
His addiction was just eating him up at that point, you know, and it was scary because he was really beyond any of us helping him. He needed to get some professional help.
It was the worst Troy had ever seen Brad, and she didn't want Jacob around his father in that strung-out state. So she packed up and left.
She called me up and said, Brad's back and I'm going home to Mother. He's a mess. So I ran down there and we were hugging in his kitchen, and he said, Dad, I'm so sorry, you know, that I'm disappointing you. And I said, you're not disappointing me. I said, I couldn't be prouder. I couldn't be prouder of your music and all the things that you've done. But I'm, at the same time, I'm deathly afraid that you're going to kill yourself.
Brad made another vow to kick heroin, and this time he made good. After staying clean for 3 months, he and Troy were so optimistic about his recovery that they decided to get married.
That was the happiest I'd ever seen Brad. He was just truly happy that day.
On May 18th, 1996, they wed at a chapel in Las Vegas, surrounded by friends and family. And it seemed like Brad was opening a new chapter in his life.
I believe Brad had, you know, made a real commitment to clean up at that point for his wife and his kid. Things were going good for him.
I really thought that it looked like there was light at the end of the tunnel.
3 days after the wedding, Sublime embarked on a short West Coast tour. They had just put the finishing touches on the self-titled album they had recorded in Texas, and they were revving up for its release that summer.
We took this trip to Garden Grove. Smelled like a blue dog inside the van.
Everyone's getting along great. You know, we don't have this problem of, you know, addiction in the band right now.
The shows were all sold out. He was playing all the new songs, and the audience reaction to the new songs was incredible. He couldn't believe it.
It's hard to keep my soul on the ground.
But Sublime's reputation as the good time party band never faded, and the road became a challenging environment for Brad's sobriety.
After one of the shows, there was some late night madness going on, and Brad stumbled onto it.
Brad was offered some heroin, and after 3 months of clean living, he gave in to temptation.
I wanted to party one more time, kind of celebrate this album release. You know, both Eric and I had told him, you know, you don't need that, you know, you don't need to do it.
On May 24th, 1996, Sublime rolled into Petaluma, California. That evening, Brad shot up and played the show high on heroin.
After playing Petaluma, he called me and he was just so happy and he wanted to tell me how much he loved Jacob and me and that they had the best show ever that night. It was the happiest I had ever heard. I could tell that he'd been partying, you know, and I was a little concerned, but I didn't want to argue with him because he was so happy.
When the band pulled into an oceanside motel in San Francisco late that night, Brad wanted to keep on celebrating.
He'd asked me if I was going to go out and party with him, and, you know, I just wasn't into it. You know, I was tired and, you know, didn't want to, you know, egg him on or support him in using.
Brad stayed out all night, and the next morning, with the beach ablaze in sunshine, he barged in to wake up his bandmates and tell them about the 10-foot waves that were breaking offshore.
He said, hey, get up, let's take Louie down to the beach. It's beautiful out, and I was just hungover, and it's convenient. I just like flicked him off and go away, and fell back asleep.
I was hungover as could be. I was not gonna get up. He's like, Mikey, you gotta see this. You're gonna trip. It's incredible. Can't you hear it? You could just hear it. Boom. I was like, oh man, come get me later.
No one knows for sure what happened next, but it's believed that Brad walked down to the beach with Louie and took in the scenery. Then Brad headed back to the hotel room he was sharing with Bud. He reached into his stash and shot up one last time.
When I woke up, Brad was laying on the bed, and he had his feet on the floor and he was undressed, and I kind of like started laughing, like, you know, huh, you must have had a good time and couldn't even make it all the way into bed. I didn't hear him snoring or any groaning from his hangover or anything, and Lou Dog was like curled up on the end of the bed, kind of like whimpering, like looking really sad. And so I got up and noticed he had like a film around his mouth, some yellow and white foamy mucus, and instantly I knew, you know, that he'd overdosed.
Bud called for help, but by the time the paramedics arrived, it was too late. On the morning of May 25th, 1996, 28-year-old Bradley Knoll was pronounced dead.
They were like, he's gone, man. That's that. End of story.
Back home in Long Beach, the phone rang just as Brad's father and stepmother were preparing to take their grandson, Jacob, on a picnic.
We were just getting ready to walk out the door, and we got a telephone call. And I knew as soon as Jim just completely fell apart.